But there's just some things they're not equipped to handle. They have no theatrics.
My clock's 32. We all the order of the Pleasantville School District School Board Charge Meeting. Over 20, or sorry, August 24, 2026. Board goals and discussion. Any discussion about board goals? Then how to charter.
I have two charts.
Good.
I just been digging into the scorecard and what, in my opinion, would be most helpful for the board to monitor the plan. And I think it's really written out in each of every pillar has 3 annual measures. And I don't know the availability and the regularity of the data, but I think the most important thing that we can ask for is to see the numbers current, whatever the previous one was, or some sort of line graph trend over time. Like the one I'm talking that I'm looking at is 8% student literacy needs are met for instruction. I don't think that it being significantly lower than that is necessarily wrong at this point. We just need to see the line going this way. And I think that it's something it was very sporadic in the presentations last year where we actually got a hard number. A lot of narrative, a lot of this is the work being done, and I don't mind at all that color being added, but I think trying to present these numbers very directly, very clearly, so that we're not having to fish through and find it, but this is the goal, this is where we're at, this is where we're type of presentation for the board to be able to know if we're making progress in these pillars over the school year and over reducing years.
So when that's presented, are you thinking that it's from we're comparing it to earlier in the school year, we're comparing it to, I mean, at this point, it'd just be to last year, or moving forward to previous years?
I mean, for as long as these are the annual measures, I think
Oh,
having a plot point for fall, winter, spring each year, and that line or graph or however the message just stays longer. That's gonna be very, very simple for us to see growth and improvement in any of these things. But like I said, I don't know what the availability, how easy it is or possible it is to get these numbers 3 times a year. Some of it is definitely, I think has to come from a survey, and I think that's more of a once a year thing. And then, but yes, and not, if the goal is 90 and you tell us that you're at 45, as long as that's followed up with, so to correct that, we are blank. I think that's what we're at.
What's the frequency, realistic frequency on the reporting?
It just depends on the item. Now, the 80% is getting to a tier 1 improvement plan. So there's a lot of details that go into that. You would be looking at our reading data, how many kids are being served tier 1, how many kids are being served tier 2, how many kids are being served there tier 3, the things that we do 3 times a year, so we have to break that down into our total population. Yeah.
you know, but one of these under pillar two, for example, is minimum of 80% of students participating in at least one club, sport, or hands-on learning activity. I don't know, is that survey data? Is that even, is that trackable 3 times a year?
That was survey data and that was data that we had in the spring, I believe, that's something that we had out in North America, the presentation, if I remember right, there's some. And I believe,
That question is asked in our climate survey data. We survey the students in the fall and spring, and that has been our plan.
Does that survey occur before the scorecard reporting? Like, would you have
It
those
will
numbers
be
back?
mid-October for the first one, and last time it was May. So we can easily incorporate that into the June scorecard. And I think it may be available for the first scorecard, if not the second, right? As we
Yeah,
did it.
yeah.
that probably seems more appropriate to do that as the end of the year, because then you would capture kids that are not being in activity in the fall, and they participate in the spring, you have your entire population.
I mean, I would like to see that growth, see the number in the fall, see the number in the spring. So I guess my overall take is that there's 12 data points here, and love to see 12 data points in this quarter.
Well,
Oh, yeah, 3 times 4 quarters.
yeah. Does anybody feel like we need to be more specific than those are the goals? And the frequency of reporting frequent as possible.
Well, this is the 3 times a year, the fall, winter, spring, or, I think we've not done a good job communicating back to you two and Caleb, sorry, about it was too much, it's not enough, but there was no clarity of this is what we want, and so trying to nail that down so that when you go to prepare something for us, you're not wasting time doing something that isn't the thing. So we're just trying to decide what we want.
If you're pondering the question.
Yeah, but I want, and I don't mind this going in a different direction, the scorecard reporting is something is something that I was bringing. I thought I'd bring to you guys, as far as we know, sure, we're doing, there's all the numbers and there's help, or there's to for the building. I think there's definitely points in there, some of it last year we weren't yet at, like NGSS, for instance, is something that they do in high school, but it's, I mean, we're just, well, we got pieces of it that we've started, but we're just not there yet, as far as we can report, data. There should be some data points coming from that this year. The other one was around it was about lesson planning, I forget the exact
Target.
the value targets. I believe that was, yeah, like a 60% goal, and I think that's something that is easily attainable through, somewhat easily attainable through observations and evaluations within the staff. With the exception of our teachers, our contract teachers that are on off-cycle years, they do a self-assessment, based on the standards. They write 2 goals, but as part of their evaluation system, off-cycle years, there are actually no observations. That doesn't mean that we can't work with the association or with this programming to look at these specific items they're doing that. We just take over that. Okay.
Could they just self-report?
Yeah.
They could be asked to self-report?
They could, yeah, they could. I don't know, and then the part of this as well is, maybe this is part of the learning progress, as we report that as a number, if there's that, and this is the data, so reporting it as a number, but also giving you, background as far as what it is that it means that we're reporting on, I think would be important. Cause that's that might be an ongoing conversation of, too much, not enough. Because I think the number itself is not gonna be very meaningful for you guys, but it serves it's a good lever for our administrators and they're going into the classroom to see that teachers are thinking about the planning process and that they are writing a learning target in a way that makes sense to the students. So that the students understand, okay, today I'm learning X, I should do this when the class is there. Lots of feedback from the comments you guys put this in practice.
Oh, alright. Well, we have performed, right, so we want to mark what is the learning target in each of the observations, so if we just want to ask to do our performance cycles. That could be added.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I meant. So what he's talking about with perform is one of my goals that I have in the packet today is initiating our conventional evaluation system as well. Some of this has to be careful about how fast we go in doing some of that, without bringing our association along at the same time as well. I'm wondering, because I know last time Jim, you had a conversation and a lot of them are indicated, in the stoplight and that is simply to show growth, and whether or not we do kind of a version of both, combination of stoplight and numbers, or if you just do it with the stoplight and head towards trying to quantify with a number.
Learning target would be an easy number to quantify. Aren't there some more ambiguous terms in the, or metrics, I would say, in the report card that we don't necessarily have a specific number for?
There are, yeah, and that's what I go through, so trying with you right now. Even the learning target, doing that 3 times a year, it's for the point of giving you guys data. I don't know how important that data point is for you in the sense of a beginning of the year metric versus an end of the year metric. Especially going into some of this which is very new at the high level. Sorry, I'm going this out as I'm thinking about how the evaluation system works. Administrators using classrooms, doing observations and our reporting cycle throughout the entire year. Or some talking about sorry.
And how some of those goals are middle school focused or high school focused or elementary, it's not necessarily gonna be the same data points that can force on goals at every level.
Well, so like goal one as an example, right, 70% of K through kids will meet benchmark, right? So that could be a red with numbers, or it could be green with numbers, don't worry.
Okay,
Guaranteed by will bring it over.
pause. Are we talking about 2 different goals? Cause I don't have that.
Are you looking at the scorecard?
I have the master, the first thing I can pop up is the master scorecard. Google Sheet. Hey, you already know it.
Okay, I'm one, I don't know how to explain this without trying to different. I'm 1 tier higher than that.
Yeah, you're looking at the actions we've
The
been.
annual measures, not the actions.
Yeah, we've been reporting on the progress measures, so how we're getting
Right. An important clarification.
Well, to see, you put some on that there.
Right.
Got it.
Very many of these don't have numbers.
Correct.
Yeah, we went able to run each of them, so that first one, there was 80% of students literacy needs and the core instruction, that is something that we can report on. In each of the 3 years based on how many students we were serving. Tier 2, tier 3. I think it needs some explanation. I think as well, I mean, there's nuances, a lot of nuances in that, but yes. But you said that students' literacy intervention needs are being met in tier 2 and 5% in tier 3. That is essentially that's a real similar goal. Essentially what we're looking at is the way in which our students are being served is 80% tier 1, 15% in tier 1, or tier 2, and 5% in tier 3.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one, as we look at that, I end up being one goal. I think that's relatively easy and doable. K5. 6 to 8, we're still really new and thin in a true reading intervention program. Well, we've got tier 3 services, which traditionally use your SPED. We don't have tier 2 services. Very, very, very thin. So K5 definitely. The second one, the attendance measure, we go to attendance should be 78. We already provide those numbers.
Yep.
Trust our adult connections by the end of the school year. But we could easily provide a fall and a spring, and have the data ready for that into the year school year. That's saying, well, those questions that we both asked, is that correct?
Correct.
And it's stays your line.
And that would be more of a 612 number.
And same with the safety and belonging. The safety and belonging one, we didn't even look at expanding it, which the last added the elementary as well. We're probably seeing this adjusted and all for expand. Okay. The schools, maintain monthly data teammates and then agendas, minutes, and artifacts. That would be a really dry measure. But we could, yeah, there's almost kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down, unless you guys want to see some of the artifacts. Agendas. 85% necessary for using data to plan differentiated instruction. Again, that would be pretty dry, but I think that would be easy to be able to survey staff probably at the end of, I would recommend at the end of grading periods. So we almost kind of provide a definition of what differentiated instruction would look like, and then you have a survey to go ask them, but I think pretty dry.
Yeah, I think some of those drier numbers would probably just be a number change, and if there was a question, or, you know, an explanation of an uptrend spike or something, that would be cool, but not just a number.
So Alan, Brenna, I see that Philip 3 annual measures is where that becomes a little more difficult to report on, and what does the report actually look like? Maybe we just have to put our heads together around what that might mean. and the self-assessment survey, K-12, Joe Lisi, as far as being able to have a student rating on that, I think adding that to the 6-12 survey is not already in there, is no problem. For elementary, this might be a time to be able to work this in with Stephanie Black as far as surveying students a couple times a year, I think that'd be easy to do. The next one in that same box there is there is an increase in structured academic discussion opportunities by May of 2026. That is another one of those evaluation questions that needs, I think needs some work in. Here's what happens when we start doing some of these observations. If we're doing it ahead of communication with our staffs as far as coming out, we generally might call them a look for as a administrator. We generally will go through some sort of, sometimes it's tied to curriculum, sometimes it's not. But we generally will go through a professional development where you would work on what's it mean to increase academic discussion within the classroom. And as an administrator, we would go through and we would actually start with the R. And staff vision that ahead of time. I'm going to say, based on my observations, I don't think that we're there yet, as far as being able to start our school year off with that, but might be able to have something to look into at the end of the year.
Okay.
The next one, there's the 106 degrees, needs at least one self-reflection, like responsibility and integrity standards per quarter. I think that's an issue. Just needs to be developed, yeah. It might be a time we might go to once per quarter. I don't think it's currently in place. So it might be something for that we should read the second semester. Coaching the DLC artifacts will show leaders in grade level content teams are planning with interaction rates in mind. And that's a self-survey with our grade level teams that we're planning on like.
Would that be something for the end of the year to build in for them as well?
I would say yes, especially at the secondary level. Elementary might be more in line with doing it sooner, but I believe so. It would be probably the year from survey question. Reflections.
Thinking about PLC artifacts, like how we want that quantified in certification.
I think what he's saying, the question is the difference between secondary model and elementary model. Elementary model, you'll generally have, like our schools, you have 3 teachers that are working as a grade level team. Or those 3 teachers to be able to work together and plan to say, hey, during the next quarter, we want to work on and they pick a particular learner attribute profile. And in that, they say, hey, our writing content. And these are the writing problems we're going to do 2 or 3 times. Very easy to do. Secondary are generally content organized, and the PLC would be built around that content organization. Not as clearly aligned, especially in a small district, because you might have one teacher doing 8th grade math, algebra, and another doing geometry, statistics and analysis. What they're planning or that alignment is not as easily as aligned as it would be at elementary, to say we focus on a particular additional course, we almost do the kind of school line. That's why we profile. Say again.
Tie it to learner profile, kind of guide that work back to mission.
Mhm.
I understand like wanting to go like a level above, not so granular with like our actionables. I'm still wrapping my head around if there, how applicable 3 data points will be to get there, since most, like, since that's really what the actions are, these are kind of like more end of year measurements, but where applicable we can. And then, again, some of these, are more specific to the different levels, and then the artifacts. I would want to provide you guys with the items that would back it up, but for instance, all of our data team agendas have personally identifiable student information, right?
Sure.
Because that's what we use to, meet their needs and find the best instructional models for them, so I'm just mulling over, like, what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah. I think from the board level, I appreciate you wanting to submit your artifacts for your argument, so to speak. But for me, from a board perspective, I'm going to believe that you're doing the work until Jim says otherwise. I will listen to narrative and any of that. I do really enjoy that, but I'm going to just go with you.
Appreciate that.
And if we ask a question of, what can you show us? No, because it has student games on it, then we would understand.
But I do think maybe this didn't say this, but I'll speak for myself. The detail behind, I agree, you're doing the work and you're doing it well. But from our perspective, where are we? Where do we say we want to be? Where are we? And then when we get a year later, where are we now? And it's that trajectory. And I can only liken it to my little world business environment that I live in, where it may suck, but it's sucking less. Or it may be great, it's getting greater, and that's really what I'm trying to pay attention to and want to know is are we making progress? Which I think everybody is on that same page. I think what we're asking for is a way to quantify that if we can, along with the great work that's being done and we're working hard to accomplish it. Does that make sense?
I'm wondering if I work with, this may make more sense, because we're doing 2 sets essentially of reporting, and one of them is that the local assessment reporting that's required now through the accountability of 3 years, 3 times a year that we started this last year with 70, is taking the data, the achievement data around reading and math. Now that we have, gosh, this gets into we said it together that, you're up to here. Because now that we're out of 2nd year of the STAR data, it's starting to get to what those things are talking about, where you guys are. Things like attendance, still providing that as data. We would report on the 80, 15, and 5, because that would be done well in the 70s piece. Then you'll start to see what are the changes that are happening over time. I think we'll have those conversations as part of 70s data presentations. And I think we just need to work in what items around the data, some of the other items around student participation in activities, their connectedness to an adult, or we can put numbers to them and show growth over time or not growth over time. We add those to those. But I think that was good. I think I can separate that out and have said, and I'll start to do on that side. I will set it here, it's just kind of two sets of data, presentations going on. Simultaneously. We're also getting at the crux of what I've been working on with the department and there's some of you guys' questions. I've got another meeting coming up this Wednesday. I'm trying to present them in the wonderings of a board. And then I provided additional questions in there, to make it more educational, to connect with just the construct of communicating with the Department of Ed. The difficulty that we are running into as an educational system, and I think we are, as a governing body here, is standards-based education, an OSAS cut score that is developed through a criterion-based measure using this Cohen's H statistical analysis, and then a more of a norm reference type of a model on how it is that we report that. We want to see X% of our kids actually meeting a certain score. On top of that, it also is even more confusing. I said it tries to explain the difference between why it is with our MTSS model, we are using one score, and yet with our OSAS, we are reading another score. And it has to do with the relative nature as far as the responsiveness of the data in order to make educational system decisions for students in real time during the school year. And so that is something that our entire system throughout the state is grappling with right now as well.
I know some of the numbers aren't gonna be great. I mean, especially with the learner profile being so new. I mean, I think we understand that things take time and accept that is, you know, us being able to see trends also opens the door for you guys to put in your 2 cents for budgeting season. You know, if we could, watching the trends of these numbers really help make that argument. In telling us how we can help. We don't have, you know, the budget is a big thing that we do have a say in, and being able to watch this over time will give you power to ask.
With that, I'm wondering what, from that conversation, sounds like what I was, when we first started looking at this, my assumption was we could basically take that document and say, here's our goals. But I'm hearing you say, well, maybe it's not quite that simple. How should we delineate what's not quite so simple to come up with our actual board work?
Well, I think from my eyes, the board goal was to make sure that our administrators know what we want to hear, not get down to the nitty gritty of telling them that part.
Yeah, and I think conceptually, I was thinking of this in terms of those long-term growth targets. Or that kind of 30,000 foot elevation as far as the change that we want to see achievement wise for the district. We had to align those anyway, because the state was saying, thou shalt. These other pieces that are within here were annual measures and actual items that would get us that we would some of those out. So, yeah. With the understanding that the longitudinal performance targets, that data is usually suppressed until maybe say October, but I think it's sometimes just November that we get that out. That's one of the questions I have for the Department of Education. Well, from a board perspective is, how do we govern through a time where we're expected to be accounted for these long-term performance targets when we don't have data until after we've made budget decisions?
You're just supposed to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think being an entire year behind to what's actually happening in the classroom.
Well, it's not even accurate.
No. But so I think the iteration about it this time is we still have those long-term performance and growth targets. They've been added to. And the state has allowed us to reset them. After they said in the beginning that we couldn't reset them. So that's in the state's hands right now as far as moving that forward. We have the 3 times a year measures from our STAR data that we can start looking at longitudinal growth for that as well. I think that will include some additional, I've got some ideas as far as ways in which we've done that in the past, just showing grade level by grade level. But there's some, again, some nuances where it's like not all grade levels are created equally as well. You're gonna see ups and downs in that. And then in terms of some of the other data points in here, I think that we've got enough information for you to start to say, okay, what else do we need to be doing to gather that data, or do we have enough right now? We're gonna start to go from some of that to recording. That said, in the, of course, for you guys, in the reporting, and the green, yellow, red lights, my suggestion might be to leave that entirely out and make it more, succinct, but still somewhat narrative based. As far as here's what we're doing, or what we've been doing for the last quarter in the classroom, for the school level.
As long as whenever possible, the narrative ends with a sentence of, this is where we were, this is where we are.
Right. Including we made from.
Sure, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I don't know, I think the stop line's a little ambiguous for me.
I don't like it at all.
Right. We try something? Pivoting?
The focus is showing growth and movement or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as I'll leave it to you guys as far as, formally planning to bring a goal back. For would you review? Or discussion is enough and we know what we're arguing towards? How do you want to close the loop on it? The rest of you mentioned last time, keeping the literacy goal as an example.
Yeah.
The second one is if you want something as simple as, identifying you and communicating, qualitative data in a trend fashion.
To articulate.
Yeah, that's.
Not way around it, but that's just funny, the construct of it, I think the construct was around. We want to see things brought to us in a quantitative fashion.
When possible.
What's that?
When possible.
When possible, that demonstrates change over time.
That feels like a goal that we're assigning to somebody else.
Yeah, so Michael's
Use information.
feels like it to me. Yeah.
And put together a sample and bring it back to discuss. So that gives us two, we understand we still have our long-term performance growth targets. Yeah, and understand, gosh, this is the difficulty, I think, piece that, as far as working with the state, that it can be so distracting from a district level to maintain focus, on one thing over a period of time. Whereas these longitudinal growth targets are brand new and they've already been added to, and, they're in the process of being changed already. And I don't think that means that we don't stop. I think it's important that we continue to look at them, over time. There's one thing that hasn't changed, for instance, is our percentage of students that actually take the statewide assessment. It is one of those things, and that was a big hurdle over the last couple of years, because the point of this last year, we had actually a great measurable growth in doing that. We've still got an area in middle school as far as a lot of outcomes taken during that, and so we've got a plan, Chevy's got a plan that she's going through as far as communicating in this next year to deliver that. And then there's just there's a probably the most difficult thing to overcome. There is an interest in when you sit down as a student or when you are a teacher proctoring the test, that you do it in a way that everyone puts forward their best effort in doing it. That's a much more difficult thing to quantify. So we got three in there that kind of stand, again, the long-term performance targets are always out there, the literacy goal. And then the trend data, anything else that's, any things that are perhaps tied to, a literacy goal like this can be very specific as far as being tied to, change from a governance level, especially in terms of how we allocate dollars to serve literacy needs or professional development.
That feels like a full play to me. So, okay. Since the need to add in you.
No,
You,
No, I'm good.
thank you. Two, policy review and operating agreement review.
So the first policy to review tonight is BED, which is board meeting procedures. This is a optional one from OSBA. It does get into some of it's putting into words some of the things that we already do, and I think there's just questions that are often come up that this would put into it. But anyway, the current policy establishes basic rules governing our board meetings, including our quorum, voting requirements, abstentions, and the use of our rules of order. The 26 AOSB model modernizes the policy by incorporating recent changes to our public meetings law, strengthening transparency requirements, clarifying voting procedures, and providing additional guidance regarding parliamentary procedures. Many of these changes in here, though, are procedural. So, under number 1, quorum and voting requirements. The new policy would explicitly state that the quorum for a 5-member board consists of 3 members and 3 affirmative votes are required to exercise the board authority. Under number 2, the public voting and secret ballots.
So before you leave there, We had a question, and I don't know if this is the right person to ask it, but if we're a board of four, is it still a quorum for you?
Or I would say yes, because you are you're technically a 5-member board, you just have absence.
OSBA is hosting, I wanna say it's like September 19th or something like that, they're having, webinar about board vacancies. It's a bit, there's been a link in their emails if you're interested, or probably on their website.
And one of ours tonight will do is a review on this board vacancies.
Thank you.
So then the number 2 there is the voting in ballots. And this is probably one of the most significant revisions. The revised policy requires that each board member's vote be recorded by name. Written ballots, if ever used, identify the board member casting the vote, and then secret ballots are prohibited. So oftentimes, it's usually the board chair's responsibility. There are often action items that are pretty transparent in the sense that, everyone's gonna be affirmative in this. There are other ones where we know just because of discussion that there may be a split vote, and sometimes it's a matter of just saying, okay, we're gonna take a roll call vote. And call folks out to say yes or no, so we can get to the recording minutes. Number 3, abstentions and conflicts of interest. Revised policy expands this by referencing Oregon government ethics law. It cross-references board policy BBFA regarding ethics and conflicts of interest, and it continues to require documentation of abstentions. The change better aligns board procedures with state ethics departments. Parliamentary procedures, so there adds 2 specific procedural expectations. And one of this is, so in the Robert's Rules of Order, and we have this right now in the current policy, that we can utilize what is called the procedure in small courts. The procedure in small courts do not always require a second. It recommends it though, if we're getting into, I think, areas where the debate is going to be more contentious, and you want to see that an actual motion is seconded. And so this is probably a discussion for the board to have a little bit more, but the idea would be all motions would be seconded before discussion, and motions to close or limit debate would actually be permissible. The distinctions between this is when and if you have a board that is not working well together or maybe contentious in doing that, that if you start to operate in a way in which you don't have to have a second, essentially as the board chair, I can make a motion and just move through without a second, and no one else may want to actually second it, which we would die, right, usually without a second. So I think there's some conversations about is that we may want to cover. Number 5, failure to follow Robert's Rules of Orders. So this is kind of the out. So the failure to follow the Robert's Rules of Order is on an invalidate and otherwise lawful for decision. I think oftentimes what we are doing and the way that historically our board has operated is just like this, that we've never fully been married to all of it. So generally, we often like to have discussion before we get to a second. And usually you'll have a second to ensure that that's the motion that people want to do, or somebody else on board with it before discussion. Anyway, it would just state that it's, if we don't follow it, it doesn't invalidate. It's a lawful decision. So again, discussion items at the end. If you'd like, so using Robert's Rules was a practical guide to order early meetings, applying Robert's Rules for more formally during complex deliberations. Relying on the board chair with assistance from legal counsel or OSBA when necessary to resolve procedural questions. I got a note underneath there that I highlighted that the recommendation would be continuing using our longstanding practice of using procedure in small boards while maintaining flexibility appropriate for inviting the board. And B, transparency in voting. All votes be publicly attributable to individual board members. conflicts of interest. There may be some area that you may want to discuss. I would just recommend that we incorporate the review into the board's annual organization meetings as we need. I think what we've gotten into is that some of these, I think we're kind of almost getting to the cycle as far as what things we review. As I think maybe those kind of hot topics start to come up. The recommendation is that we adopt the OSB model policy substantially as written, and that revised policy aligns board procedure with current version law, strengthens transparency in board voting, clarifies the handling of conflicts of interest, modernizes the parliamentary procedure, and reinforces the Robert's rules are to facilitate effective governance rather than division and validate thoughtful board actions. I also recommend the board continues the Robert's Rules of Order procedure in small boards. Anything in there that jumps out at you? Would you like to discuss further?
I support your recommendation.
Sorry, say again.
I support your recommendation.
Yeah, do we bring it back though, the next meeting?
Yeah,
For the official adoption?
the idea is just to use this as discussion time. Tell me how it is that you would like to maybe see that first read book and then bring it back. You'll see here when we get to KNA, immigration enforcement. I got some more specific examples aside for how I think that we should write the policy that's not written, that would not OSBA is substantially provided.
I've never seen Robert's Rule of Order procedure in small boards. That is a different document than just Robert's Rules.
I hadn't either until I saw it in our policy and looked for it. Yes,
And there is such a thing,
there is.
like the board chair, the vice chair, if I read it.
I didn't know that it's just much more liberal in its application.
Yeah.
Yeah. The idea like of, having a motion, it says you don't have to have a second motion. And like the idea, we often have discussion before we have a motion, or sometimes we have a motion and a discussion and we look for a second. Okay. Next one is BPDC board meeting agenda. And this one, like the last one, is really operationalizing more of how we currently do it. So we currently don't have a separate board policy governing agenda development. So the adoption of this policy would establish a clear and transparent process for preparing board meeting agendas while aligning district practice with the Oregon public meeting laws. And this is why I highly recommend one from OSBA. Let's see here, I think why the adopted policy is pretty self-explanatory. It's a roadmap for every board meeting. Number one, preparation of the agenda. Proposed policy assigns responsibility for directing preparation of the board agenda to the board chair. The board chair may seek assistance from the superintendent or another board member. Currently, our practice is that we have an agenda development continue as a collaborative process between the board chair, vice chair, and superintendent. And that's even evolved since I got here. So when I first came here, John was the board chair, and just John and I met. And then we started incorporating the vice chair into it just over time. I think a lot of that had to do with the ability of working with people's schedules. And the chair is not able to be there. They were often, the vice chair was there for the other meetings. And they generally worked out also in the sense that the vice chair oftentimes becomes the chair over time as well. So there's some practice involved in that. Two, requesting agenda items. Proposed policy allows agenda items to be suggested by board members, staff members, students, community members. Requests are submitted to the board chair or superintendent at least 5 working days before the meeting. A current board policy, well, we don't have a board policy around it, so this really, I think just strengthens the idea of how do we suggest an agenda item. Other notice, the proposed policy requires that the agenda identify the principal subjects anticipated for discussion, provide sufficient detail for members of the public to understand, and identify statutory authority. We follow those things now. The board agenda amendments, proposed policy allows the board chair to amend the agenda before it's posted, and the board by majority vote to amend the agenda during the meeting, including adding items. 5, consent agenda, proposed policy formally authorized the use of the consent agenda. 6, distribution of the board packets. Proposed policy recommends the board members receive the agenda and supporting materials at least 3 full working days before the meeting. And we're pretty consistent on doing that. This is an area that we've actually expanded as well as far as posting the packets online before. So previously it was just the agenda, and we posted a packet now so the community can see that. The confidential information, proposed policy clarifies that copies of the agenda is distributed to the public. The media will not include confidential materials contained in board packets. Pretty straightforward. Recommendation is that we would adopt this, and we saw our first read is substantially as it's been read by OSBA. BDTG recordings and minutes of board meetings. This one's had quite a few changes, especially going through the pandemic, as meeting laws were often not able to be attended. So it does have some update. The current policy requires written minutes for all board meetings and establishes the minimum information that must be included in those minutes. The policy also addresses executive session minutes and public access to board records. The new model policy must be reflect significant statutory changes regarding meeting recordings, official records, and record retention. The revised policy recognizes that a video or audio recording may serve as the official record of the meeting, establishes posting requirements for recorded meetings, and clarifies long-term retention requirements. So summary of significant changes: 1, recording of board 80 minutes. The proposed policy incorporates Oregon's requirements that school districts within the average daily membership of 50 or more record board meetings that are open to the public and post those recordings within 7 days after the meeting. So that's currently actually done. The official record of the meetings, the revised policy recognizes 2 acceptable methods for maintaining the official record of a board meeting. And I think this is probably the most important thing for you guys to make a decision tonight. One of those is the video or audio recording, and the other is the written minutes. So if written minutes are prepared, they're not required to be a verbatim transcript, but it's accurate to reflect the meeting and include all the information required by law. The required contents of the official record. Board members present, motions and resolutions, individual votes by name, the substance of discussion and references to documents discussed during the meeting, public availability of minutes. The revised policy continues the requirement that written minutes be made available within a reasonable time following the meeting, and the policy also contemplates publication of minutes on the district website in addition to making them available upon request. The recommendation would be that we continue their current practice of publishing approved materials on the district website. And so right now, our public has historical access to our minutes, our packets, and the recording altogether. Executive session updates language regarding executive session records. So there's just clarifications in there to make things more transparent as far as why it is that the board is meeting in executive session. Record retention, revised policy provides that either the recording or written minutes must be retained permanently. If written minutes are maintained as a permanent record, any meeting recording must be retained for at least 1 year after the minutes are created. And so the big discussion here is we've got a couple of options here. Option 1 is maintain written minutes as the official permanent record while continuing to record in post-board meetings. And option 2 would be designated recordings as the official record. Recommendation that we stick with our current approach, which is to provide full for transparency, but our minutes are the actual permanent
factory.
Otherwise, we would look to your first reading, of this policy as it's been substantially written by OSB.
Would you say we need a decision tonight?
Only if you wanted something different than the recommendations that are captured in here.
If I feel like we need to do it different. Okay, here.
Alright, so this next one is, and this is the required policy. KNA, this is immigration enforcement on district property. This actually is required by law to be adopted by September 30th. We are not gonna make that just because we just now got this from OSBA. Not a big deal, we can put it into practice, but it will be the first meeting in October before we could actually have a second read on this. This has been an interesting one. Essentially what the law stated is that we need to, as a district, adopt a policy and have a procedure for what happens if federal immigration authority comes onto district property. It clarifies with our staff, and there'll be an email sent out to all staff as far as the policy and the background on this. But it clarifies with the staff, what happens if somebody were to show up at a front office, identify themselves, or maybe not identify themselves as a federal immigration, and essentially communication stops at that point in time, and I get designated as liaison, that information would come to me. The recommendation then is that if I'm not available, then it would go to one of the two building principals based on what the building was happening at. From my understanding is there's not, at least in the state of Oregon, there's not been a single immigration official come on campus. Now, we've had reports where they are off campus, and nobody tells the parent drops a child off, and then they will make a stop and deportation. Do that, but as far as actually coming on campus, I don't know any reports on campus. When this first landed, so legislation, made the legislation, went to the Department of Ed, so understanding the Department of Ed said, we don't, this is a policy that probably should be written by the Department of Justice. They sent it to the Department of Justice, we don't write policies, but they gave it the rest go. OSBA, I think, was waiting for that to happen, and that's why it took them longer to do theirs. OSBA essentially wrote or adopted the Department of Justice policy and then added more kind of what they would see as maybe best practice from the school in there as well. And so the policy became pretty big. So I got to background into that. So if I go to page 2 there, the summary of significant changes. The first one is the required board policy. So the House bill requires the district to adopt a policy addressing notice when federal immigration authorities are confirmed to have entered school property or immigration enforcement. This is therefore a required policy rather than optional. Legislation also requires the policy to identify at least one administrator responsible for coordinating the district's response. The second one, designation of immigration liaison, I've talked about. Superintendent would be the primary, the building principals would be the alternate for superintendent's unavailable. Third is the required notice. So when the federal immigration authority is reported to have entered school property for immigration enforcement, the liaison must confirm whether the authority is present for that purpose. Once confirmed, a notice must be provided as required by law. And then we've got 2 ARs that go with this as well. That would serve as that notice or the ability and method to be able to keep track of that information. The number 4. Oh, I want to go through that one a little bit more. So the model policy, or the OSB model identifies required recipients as far as notice. Students attending the affected school or in grade levels established by policy and above, parents or guardians of students attending the affected school, staff of the affected school, and community-based service providers that have requested to receive such notice. The notice must identify the general location of the immigration authority, whether classes or school operations were affected. It may not disclose personal identifiable information, other legally protected information, or information whose disclosure good threat in health or safety. Question in doing that is, I think, whether or not there's support in utilizing the electronic communication system provided in notice required into the policy. Get that towards recommendation towards the end. Or notice when student information is provided, so the proposed policy provides that unless otherwise prohibited by law or court, for the district will make reasonable efforts to notify student or the parent or a party of the student when the district has provided information related to that student to a federal immigration authority. And the administration recommends retaining this requirement in the streamlined policy because it is part of the statutory notification framework. Number 5, training requirements. So the OSBA model identifies specific training requirements for the immigration liaison and alternate immigration liaison. If I remember right, the policy in itself, the model policy that they wrote, had training for all staff. And some timelines in doing. I don't think that's necessary given that the chance that it's happening is very low, but it is, to my knowledge, it's never happened. So the training in the policy that I would provide or recommend is that the individuals, myself and the principals would be the designated people that would give training on what needs to take place in reporting. And then there are 2 administrative regulations with this. The first one establishes the operational response procedures for staff and administrators. This is what staff may or may not do. Refer to the immigration liaison, review legal documents, superintendent approval, and documentation of school sponsored events, transportation related procedures. And the second one is the standardized federal immigration enforcement request of law. So it's used to document the requesting officer, the authority, documents presented, superintendent review, witnesses, document follow-up actions. So essentially, if somebody does come here, and those are the questions that we document as far as trying to get information about who the person was and what they were coming to do. The recommendations that we would actually maintain both of those regulations. So the scope of the board policy. So it's my recommendation that this policy remain concise and address only the policy elements required by legislation, detailed staff response procedures, document review, incident documentation, school event procedures, transportation procedures, and similar operational matters should remain in administrative regulation. Furthermore, recommend adopting only those policy provisions expressly required by the House bill and related Oregon statutes. The OSBA model includes optional language, administrative practices, and recommendations that exceed statutory requirements. The administration recommends addressing those matters through administrative regulation or operational procedures rather than board policy. I feel that this approach maintains legal compliance and avoids unnecessary expansion of board policy.
You said, here, there was a question about what system to notify through.
The electronic system, and I have no problem using the electronic system. It's really quick and easy to go get that information out quickly.
Is there any, do you have a time frame that information has to go out?
I believe in the statutory language, there is, I have to go through it a little bit deeper right now to find what that is, but I believe that in the statutory language there, that's only lawyers can do. There is a time frame that allows for information to be able to put together, essentially as soon as possible. As you can see, and I think the response is this was a policy that seemed to be written, and it's applied across a broad range of school districts and areas. That has more of a political response than anything else. It's almost sounding an alarm that somebody's in your community that we're, you guys pay attention, and we talked about this as superintendents in Lake County. We don't know any incidences where ICE has come onto a school facility in the neighborhoods, yes, but on a school facility. Otherwise, the intent is to write your first read as succinct and statutory. If it'll follow. The last one is the board policy DL, issues of payroll checks. So currently, this policy establishes district procedures regarding payroll preparation and deductions and employee dates, pay dates. Policy provides that payroll be administered in accordance with applicable collective bargaining agreements and state federal law. Also establishes the district's monthly payday schedule and identifies how payday is adjusted. And the 20th of the month falls on a weekend. Usually we'll go like a Friday or if it falls on a Saturday, we'll get paid on a Friday. If it falls on a Sunday, we'll spend it Monday. Policy contains a provision addressing payroll distribution during school vacation periods. And I would like to say this is nothing from OSBA. This was a midterm issue where Sherry recognized that we had a contradiction between the business, way in which we were doing work, and what the policy had. So since the policy was last re-adopted, the district has transitioned from issuing physical payroll checks to utilizing the fully automated payroll system, deposit, electronic payroll processing. So the summary of the proposed provision, so we need to remove the outdated all that payroll provision. Essentially, the final sentence of the policy currently states that if the regular payday occurs during the school vacation period, such as winter or spring break, employees will instead be paid on the last school day or before the vacation. This provision reflected a timing payroll checks are physically printed and distributed through the schools. The revised language that we would suggest and bring for our first read is that the payday shall be the 20th day of the month or as otherwise specified in applicable provisions of the employees' collective bargaining agreement, group agreement with the district. If the 20th day of the month falls on a Saturday, the payday should be the Friday prior. If the 20th of the day falls on a Sunday, the payday should be on the following day. So it's basically recommending the policy as it reads with that change. It's all the possible you of this meeting.
Else on the policy review, on the Zoom,
That's it.
anything else? For the work session. You're on working?
Apparently, you're outside.
Anything else? And we will adjourn. Session. At 18, 17, 19 minutes. So we didn't know yet.
Where's the finish on time today? This one. Remind me.
You get every day.
I think you're guys for that. That's fine, you have enough.
I'm traveling that day, so it should.
Right.
My son is here long board seat.
Right, brother.
ETSA. It's a big arch training.
Oh, really?
I know, I do work on it.
That's it, not impossible, but it is.
Yeah.
I've never been there, I'm excited. You been there?
I haven't been. Only been for 3 seconds. Well, that would be fun.
Just something.
I just saw this week, I didn't realize the date. It's not playing for back to school. 30 million. Apparently, it's all that too.
Yeah, we should definitely not get all of her.
Or district. For which of y'all? Where you schedule school board? 2006. The pledge of.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm ready. Our mission is to graduate all students with high levels of academic and personal achievement, ready for post-secondary excellence, and prepared for productive, compassionate citizenship through research-based instruction and a collaborative system of support.
Very much. Changes or additions to the agenda? None. Great. Forum. Individuals who are on site, or portion of the board meeting, members of the public are specifically invited to present items of accommodation and or concerns in the direction of the board chair or public participation may be allowed at the time specifically to agenda items for under consideration by the board. Individuals who are viewing online, school district posted the agenda on their website. The Friday before, regularly scheduled Monday school board meetings and allow public comment prior to the meeting. Please click on, have divided, share the comments and school board consider meeting. Personnel matters do not be discussed with the public in the school board meeting, with the public, or no concerns or accommodations should share them directly. Mr. Superintendent. Any public comment? Thank you very much. Item number 4, action items 4.1, approve the July 20th board charge meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve July 20th, 2026 board charge meeting minutes.
Motion, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Then 4.2, approve July 20th, 2026 regular board meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve July 2026 regular board meeting minutes.
You have a motion, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. 4.3, accept English learners in Oregon annual report from 4/25.
So context, this is one of those annual reports that require that we do, as you can see, it's an entire report for the entire state of Oregon and not very much if any of it actually, provides any information that's useful for us. But procedurally, we have to, have the report.
Thank you. A lot of pages. Do I have a motion to accept English learners in Oregon annual report from 4/5?
Move to approve or to accept the English learners Oregon annual report 2024-25.
Okay, we have a motion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously. 4.4, approve personnel report.
All right, so this month's personnel report is a licensed hire, so Wesley Scott is being recommended for the CTE Industrial Arts, specifically the metals teaching position for 26-27 school year. Mr. Scott brings extensive industry experience in welding, fabrication, industrial maintenance, electrical systems, hydraulics, pneumatics, and equipment troubleshooting. He also served as a welding instructor and instructional specialist at Lane Community College from 2023 to 2025, where he taught advanced welding and fabrication coursework, including metallurgy, blueprint interpretation, multiple welding processes, plasma cutting, and CNC operations. Mr. Scott is being hired on a temporary basis while the district supports him through the Oregon TSBC licensure process, and he completes the requirements necessary for full licensure. Excuse me. The administration believes this combination of industry expertise and prior instructional experience will provide a strong support for students in the district's CTE industrial arts program. So this opening came about with the full retirement of Steve Smith in the wood shop. Nick Heater was our metal shop teacher. Nick's experience is more with woods, and he was offered the opportunity to go to the employees, so he chose that. So it's very good. So pretty striking that the board of directors approved the personnel action for licensed employees as reflected in this resolution. And any addendum presented along with the resolution, the categories include temporary licensed.
Questions for him? We have a motion to approve the personnel report.
I'll move to approve the personnel report.
All those in favor?
I,
Passes unanimously. Accept the fourth quarter 4.5, accept fourth quarter financial report for 2026. Any especially important points you'd like to note?
Mostly I just want to say that this is temporary numbers prior to audit. We are trying to get ready for our audit because there's a lot to it, but it will be October 5th and 6th, and then after that time, somewhere between that there, December 31st, we'll have final numbers on the ending of the 25-26 year. And then the second document here is just reporting what's happened so far in July. It's a real slow month for us in terms of expenditures, but we do get a double payment of our state school fund to keep us floated for us. This has come up, but other than that, everything was pretty normal.
Questions for Sherry? We have a motion to accept the financial report. Allowed?
that's a move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Was that June or July? Or
I'm sorry,
which one were you guys doing?
4.6. Financial report. Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
no, 4.5.
Oh, yeah.
Or, sorry,
No,
Yes.
now I need 4.6.
No, we gotta redo 4.5, because we set it as accept financial report for July, so we need to do 4. Motion for 4.5 and accept the fourth quarter.
I'll move to accept the fourth quarter financial report ended June 3rd.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
So we need to circle back and look over the financial report. Still do a motion, or,
Already got
I know,
Would you have that? To be, I think they're just amongst the group, is there any questions?
financial report for July.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
4.7.
The first reading on EAA ordinance authority and responsibility. And this was the model on the OSBA. The question I have for you guys as far as the time, is this a policy that you want to go through item by item, as far as having any questions? Certainly we can do that, I have in the past. And if not, have you had enough time to be able to review it and accept it as a first read?
Opinions?
Okay, so we're,
Yeah,
Yeah, just make sure you're ready for the last one. So we will. Yep. Do we need a motion to approve, or no, this is first reading?
It is first reading. In the past, though, with these action items, we have just accepted a first reading, just for the record.
Take a formal motion or just a formal motion?
Do a motion with a vote, yeah.
I would hear a motion for first reading BBAA.
and move to approve first reading of policy BBAA, board member authority and responsibility.
All those in favor, say aye.
um,
Motion passes. 4.8,
So this one was the, board policy BBE vacancies on the board, and I'd say we'd take a little more time to go through this one as the first reading. We also have this as other business, as we like our position one, response position. So the policy will read as follows, vacancy on the board will be filled through the following procedures. At a board meeting, the board will declare the vacancy, that has already been declared. The board or designee will establish an application period of at least 20 days. Applicants will be required to submit an application to the district office by the designated date. Deadlines and instructions will be posted on the district website. The board can vote to extend or reopen the application period at any time. Number 3, after the application period is ended, the superintendent designee will verify applicant eligibility. Applicants must be be an elector of the district, is required to be registered to vote within the district and have resided in the district for a period of 1 year immediately preceding the appointment, not be an employee of the district or a charge school located within the district, except the substitute bus driver in accordance with the RS. The board will review applicant materials in an open board meeting. The board may select applicants to interview, and the interview will be held in an open board meeting. During an open board meeting, the board will vote to appoint one of the applicants. In the event that no applicant receives a majority of votes, the board may re-vote or vote to reopen the application period. And the newly appointed board member will take oath of office before assuming the duties of office and will be seated immediately thereafter. The appointee will serve until the 30th following the next election. For that election, either the remainder of the term for the position or a full term for the position will be on the ballot. If the offices of the majority of the board members are vacant at the same time, the directors of the Lane and Steve district shall appoint persons to fill the vacancies from qualified individuals.
from my recollection, is we declared the vacancy at our last meeting. Couldn't remember if we established the 20-day application period. I think we did.
We did not, at that point in time, we tabled it and moved it for discussion, at this agenda. So essentially, this has become first read. I think at that point in time today, for you guys to have a conversation about the vacancy, do you want to continue through this process and actually adopt it? Do you want to move forward on the plan for filling the position? Do you want to use this as as the process that you want to follow, or do you want to choose a different process?
Well, I noticed that the board or designee will establish an application period of at least 20 days. That's the same thing. So theoretically, we could linger till we decide to establish an application period.
Yes, and I did not find anything. There's definitely signals of a 5-member board, and we have to go through a process for doing that. There's no outstanding timelines in doing it. I think there was some reference to, I don't remember even the reference as far as the timeline it's taken doing it. I think whatever the board is deciding, like through your other business discussions, that this just gives some transparency with the public as far as what you're intending to do.
And if we see a fifth board member, they serve through June of 27 when that position comes up for election, right?
Yes, yeah. So based on this policy here, I think it's actually covered under the RS as well, is that they would fill the remainder of whatever was after that positions.
Put out there, is there any reason we wouldn't? But the 20-day application period out.
As far as the current open position.
Well, I guess what I'm assuming is if we adopt this without toying with the words, we would be saying we're ready to put forward the 20-day application period.
Correct, and that's what I like the fact that you pushed this, to tonight to discuss further, rather than having it at the last meeting when it came about. If the language of this particular policy seems doable, and that's what we'd like to move forward with, and I would accept this and then talk about the particulars, meant, under 6.1. We get to that point, as far as the timeline, you would not, since this is not actually adopted policy, or not, if you want to do something tonight, you would not have to keep to the 20 days.
Right. Any disagreement with this as accepting as a first reading?
Everything's fine.
I'll spare you the motion, I will move. Accept the first three vacancies on the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
That's.
This next one is,
4.9, the board meeting notices and communications.
it's a policy BT. This policy in comparison to the original policy, provides quite a bit more definition. So as you can see, the entire first page and the first line of the second defines communication, convening, decision-making process, deliberation, executive session, intermediary meeting, public meetings, forum, and work session or workshop. What I like about this is, I think even in the sense of our situation here, I came into this position not having superintendent experience, and so a lot of these policies were brand new to me because they weren't directly related to the building. I think in terms of the board governance area, there were new board members at the time coming in, there would be often questions around, that quorum, or can we do something at a work session or a workshop, or was a workshop different from a regular board meeting or a special meeting. This does provide definitions for those other policies. And again, types of meetings, regular meetings, special meetings, emergency meetings, it gives definitions to all of these work sessions and assembly sessions. They don't substantially do anything or even remotely do anything different than what we're doing right now. It just is a normal policy that lives, that actually defines and enforces. For instance, I think on page 3, second paragraph, there are quorum of board members shall not outside of the meeting conduct in compliance with public meeting laws, use a series of communications of any kind directly or through intermediaries for the purpose of deliberating or deciding on any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the board. This prohibition applies to using any one or combination of all methods of communication. It details that that was impacting the practices that we already follow. Communication outside of board meetings, maintain communication between or among members of the board, including a quorum that are, there's three things that we identified. So kind of gives you an idea of what can happen as well. Talks about the email sent to the board. So again, there's not a lot of anything, if anything, practice. What makes it is different than what we currently do. It provides it for us as a reference and a guide. We don't really have.
What happens? Order a motion to accept the first reading.
I'll move to accept the first reading of policy BD, board meetings, notices, and communications.
Favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. 4.10 for free regular session.
So it looks like the last one, this policy BEC provides us with, the examples and the definitions specific to our executive sessions. And again, provides that to us as a guide in writing. Nothing in here is substantially different or even partially different than the way in which we are currently in the executive sessions. As you can see, if you look at all the references to the state statutes, the executive session policy is heavily grounded in ordinances.
Comments on the executive session. Motion to
I move to accept the first reading of policy BDC executive session.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Lastly, 4.11, hiring license administration.
Alright, so this one, we did have some language changes to it, and here's what I captured from our review. For the most part, it's relatively the same, because there's the process and the order in which it comes to this change from last one. So when an administrative vacancy occurs, the district's preferred practice is to conduct an open competitive selection process that provides qualified applicants an opportunity to apply for the position. The superintendent may determine that an internal selection process limited to qualified district administrators is in the best interest of the district prior to taking action to initiate an open internal or transfer process. The superintendent shall notify the board of the intended selection process. Except when the superintendent determines that a direct transfer of an existing administrator is appropriate, the following procedure shall be applied. And I've got to apologize, I think this is the original one, isn't it?
No, this is the one of the changes.
One of the changes, okay. Just talking myself out of it. Okay, so except when the superintendent determines, the following procedures shall be followed in the selection of all administrative personnel below the rank of superintendent. So for an open competitive process, the administrative vacancy shall be announced publicly prior to the first interview, providing sufficient time for interested applicants to submit applications. For an internal process, and notice that the vacancy shall be provided to eligible district administrators, providing sufficient time for submission of applications. Applications shall be in writing, directed to the superintendent, shall be the responsibility of the superintendent designee to complete the employment file with credentials furnished by the, or at the request of the applicant. Screening committee shall be appointed by the superintendent. The selected applicant shall be granted a personal interview following the deliberations of the screening committee. Upon completion of all interviews, the screening committee shall make a recommendation for the position under consideration, and the superintendent's recommendation shall be presented to the board for consideration and appointment to the position. An administrator shall serve a probationary period that does not exceed 3 years unless the administrator and the district mutually agree to a shorter time period.
We had copious discussion about this at our last meeting. Feel like this reflects what.
Yeah.
Good. Is there a motion to approve first reading of hiring and license administration?
Well, move to approve the first read of policy CCC, hiring of finance administrators.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Number 5, reports and information. Point 1, review reports, presented operating agreement.
This is our annual review of the operating agreements that we've had in the past. They haven't had any substantial, any changes since we've started. So we've agreed upon a collaborative governance model. The communication agreements, again, haven't changed. They essentially follow the chain of command. Board members shall communicate directly with the superintendent board chair for our meetings to address questions and concerns. Board members, superintendent shall communicate one-on-one, shall concern arises with any member of the board or superintendent deems appropriate, in order to avoid surprises, or shall communicate directly with the superintendent whenever possible. That goes vice versa. The superintendent or not communicate directly with the board. Questions tonight as far as reviewing this, does anyone see any issues with bringing this forward for an agreement more formal? Or is there questions about the governance model or changes to the governance model or?
We should change it, I just figured it out.
We're thinking we should collaborate less. Sounds like we're in agreement.
Okay, me too.
Here's evaluation.
Much like the last document, we've utilized the COSA, the Superintendent Evaluation Workbook, the standards in here and the process that's outlined in this workbook. Just so there was an opportunity to review, and again, much like the last one, is there any desires to have conversation about it, make changes to it, clarifications, discuss?
Exactly the same one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty agreeable.
I'm good.
Well, that also includes the timeline, so I should do the timing as well. So the timeline right now is as follows. So today was the review process. By 9/21, to that in our next meeting, at that meeting, adopt the formal process and the goals for the year. 12/14 would be that interim progress on the goals. January 11th, evaluation document sent up to the board. 2/8/27, or the 2/27 meeting if needed is where we go through that process of the evaluation. Board superintendents, myself, board members then meet to complete summary evaluation by 2/22, which then by 3/8, which is part of that March 15th timeline, would be when everything would be sort of get summarized into a final document. The process and timeline structure and your report.
You wanna just briefly run through your 3 goals of the board?
Yeah. So, and goal 1 is a carry over, I think much like the board did as far as strengthening literacy and student learning. That was one that was important just to continue forward. So during the 26-27 school year, the implementation and monitoring of the district's literacy and student learning priorities by establishing a consistent system for reviewing achievement data, identifying instructional needs, supporting school level responses, and communicating progress to the board. Number 2 is expand community partnerships to support students and families. So during the 26-27 school year, establishing and advance sustainable community partnerships that expand access to food and after-school programming. These things are actually in process right now. So we had Lake County Food Bank that was here over the summer. They were here last year as well. And we're right now plans to continue that. It's the 3rd Thursday of the month. It was extremely successful this year. The summer was a huge turnouts for it every Thursday, every 3rd Thursday. So we plan to continue that. The other part of that is looking to develop a partnership with YMCA for an after-school, program. And so they YMCA runs these programs throughout the county. So we are in the process of developing that right now. We have to stay out today to take a look at the cafeteria at the elementary. So we're running it out of there. It's a K-6 program. And they are available from the time the school is out until 6 p.m. at night. So this has been something that I've had since I've been here, as far as not only for some limited community, but for some community wanting perhaps some more options as far as after school care, but also from our staff that's showing interest in after school care. Second goal. Third goal, district-wide electronic evaluation and professional growth system. So we reference that tonight, and that system is called Perform. It's also known as Talent Ed. Nice thing about it is it really kind of standardizes the process. Right now, we're a paper process, and so paper process is being able to, doesn't have the automated and things, and so it'd be much nicer program to automate system, automated, and bring us into the 21st century and get us away from the paper pencil system. Be back home. Nothing further? Thank you. 5.3 calendar events. Probably shuts off this time of night. Boxes now, these just go through these procedures.
You've been working for a while.
Like you get that, like they have a medical profession, it's got a little badge and they just tap it to some box. I want that. My job, because now we have 16 character password requirements and they change them every 60 days. 16 days. Yes.
Little numbers, special characters.
Yes, all of it.
Password every 50 days. And if you don't, yeah, and if you don't do it, then your ID card no longer.
Oh my God. So it doesn't, having an ID card doesn't change that.
You still have to have one.
You stole like my life at the end of the day. Okay, what's the deal with
I didn't want you to think I had
Alright, so, September 1st is our all staff, breakfast that we've got in the student center. I believe that Drew is, on board to give a board president or board message at that, but I also know that if Drew's open and someone else wants to take that on, he's usually welcome to turn that over. But anyway, if you want to show up, you can show up. All of you can, 8 a.m. we begin, breakfast runs till about 8:30, then we have some information and welcome back with our staff.
You say that's the first?
Yes. Quite a few new staff this year, so that'd be fun. On September 3rd, we've got our middle school, high school, back to school night between 3 and 6 p.m. Meet the teacher on September 8th for the elementary school, starting at 2:30. PTO meeting September 9th here in the community center at 2:30. Booster Club meeting on September 9th, that evening at 6:30 here in the community center. Education Foundation is on the 17th at 6 here in the community center. Our FFA official meeting is on the 21st at the high school student center at 6:30. And then we've been talking about, as far as just some board goals that conversations we've been having and we're working on. is really kind of specifically also related to the OSBA. So their regional meeting is on October 13th. Stephen's gone for a couple of times as well. There are some boards where 3 or 4 members show up, 4 members show up, so it's also a sign. A lot of times we will connect with another school district where they're maybe only have a couple of board members or sitting, that's what last year, maybe months, couple of years. They tend to sit on the same side of the room as we do. That's like ESD, and that's usually they serve dinner, I want to say it usually starts about 6:30, but by the time it's, I'll add that in there. And then there's a registration as well, so if you want me to send something out for that, again, with this.
Item 6, other business, appointment for vacancy. So now we have,
This way.
right, a policy that we have accepted, proposal that we have not had a first reading, right?
Second.
First reading tonight was second reading, thank you, policy. So what we need to do,
Tonight's that, really that discussion as far as what you want to do about the position. You want to wait still to go through a formal, adoption of the policy, and then that would be the direction for me to begin to send out the information, posted on the website, figure out what that 20 days were, and then start working through the agenda process. Because I'm assuming that we would then just add this to a regular meeting, start with interviews at the beginning of the, at the very beginning of a meeting, and then the action process as we're in the evaluation, for you guys to do to say, what do you want to say about the particular applicants of the year? That's where it gets, if you want some feedback as far as being able to, going back and watching some of Springfield's recent meetings, because they've done this now.
they don't seem like a very good ground.
No, you can learn a lot from samplers. And I watched, and so, you know, they really got into this position I've not ever seen before, 30-some years, where they are literally, I would nominate this person, and they just, like I said, somebody's allowing them, but they take a vote, and it's tied 2-2, and somebody might nominate this person, it's 2-2, and it's kind of table. They brought it back, I believe, until they were actually defined. They would eventually. But it does give you the procedural kind of idea of like what does it look like to actually sit in a public meeting and interview when there's our entire lives have been, if we interview for something to interview, it's usually more of a private setting. Was, you know, so look like tonight, maybe just as a board discussion, you may want to discuss or maybe put it over to the next one as far as the agenda item. How do you want to formulate questions? Like
Yes, that's my question.
how do you want to formulate? You want to formulate them just on mission, or just with people who have shown an interest, they served in the district. In Springfield, for some, Eugene has been similar to some sense, but they generally want to see that folks have been involved, that they maybe served on the PTO, or that they served on the budget committee, that there's been some sort of involvement, that they just show up because there was an opening. They want somebody with experience and shown interest in the district.
And we would have all of our deliberations in a public meeting as well.
And I think, again, I think if you want to watch some of their meetings, well, they have not, it's not been a great example, it's been a great example as far as the process. Some of their deliberations have been good as far as how they air those things, and how you see the difficulty that, you know, that you that they went through as far as how do I bring up you know, that I'm in favor of a particular, applicant. I think it's, some of this you can start to develop now through me, and I think through the questions, then that helps. So for instance, are you interested in somebody that's got previous district experience? So one of the questions would be not just about your experience in working with the Pleasantville School District, or in activities or committees or other things maybe that you've done on within the schools. And that helps in the deliberation, to come up with an applicant that, yeah, and, you know, somebody makes a motion to approve, and you're quite certain that everyone else will most likely approve as well. I guarantee you.
So from a timing perspective, if we didn't do anything, we could get to September 21st. We would have a second read, at which point we have a policy. At which point we would be ready to provide our 20-day application notice, right?
Yeah.
And in the meantime, between now and then, we would be thinking through and developing questions that we want to ask. So that the 20-day period arrived, well, I guess we would wait until the 20 days. Are you gonna ask, no, you're gonna ask for any application?
Yeah, they would, provide that, that's part of that.
Right. So we would need to have those in place before we went out to public for applications.
Yeah.
So by the time.
So the idea, I think, is if on the, and I would start to formalize this process as well, so if you're thinking that on the 21st, that as far as an action item, we would have second read, and then perhaps at the very bottom of that, as far as the action item, there would be a motion to designate a vacancy. If we could add that into the agenda, and that would kind of open processing that we would have moving forward as far as how we would do that. Between now and then, that's what you're thinking, between now and then, I would start to develop, make good questions for you guys to look at.
And would it be inappropriate, either you have a question or something we really felt you wanted to know, we could share that with you, including your deliberation of questions.
Yes, and I think on the 20, yeah, I think we could manage that easily. Yeah, what I would want, without formalizing it, and I don't know if this is going forward as far as practice, but I think that we work together long enough now. I think there's a sense that if there was something that just stood out as far as like, this is Rusty's question and Rusty's question only.
How many years ago did that?
Yes,
End of this.
that there would just be a conversation like, the other board members may want to weigh in on this and do that.
Yeah.
Or you guys all want to do it. Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Which 20 days, I think, would take us to the second meeting of that month, which I think is the 19th. October,
Yes,
the 19th, yeah, so I think it extends us through the 5th, and so we wouldn't have any action until the 19th.
Are we bound by any hiring rules from?
You know, you used to be bound by your policies, you wouldn't want to do anything that would be those discriminatory in your selection, yeah. And that's, I think, that's sticking to probably the script as far as the questions, not getting too far off script as far as, personal questions.
Yeah, I think I read here that the possibility would exist, well, one, nobody applies. Or second, none of the applicants suit our needs. At which point, we do it all over again, or we wait for the election, or whatever.
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
In the meantime, we continue to operate with a 4-person board at the risk of
Ties.
ties. And you don't need to break a tie, that's it, some condition. Which that's probably likely, but you never know.
Happened recently.
Yeah, that's true.
This is gonna be the smoothest year ever. Any intention to bring tie that those two?
Well, I don't know,
We're gonna work on going forward with their time.
Yeah, I agree.
does that timeline make sense to you both?
Yeah. So if we have, so you're getting like the list of potential interview questions to us before next board meeting, right?
Yeah.
If we have any ideas, we do that, we send them to you before the next board meeting.
I'll likely have it up to you. I check my calendar for serious.
It has to be with compost, probably.
Maybe tomorrow. Yeah, bring a list of questions together. Read.
And we have, is there an AR for budget committee? Application or is that separate piece of paper?
There's policy of the budget committee, but I don't believe that we have a specific process to. As far as timeline or.
No,
I just have it in like for questions,
Oh.
similar to the question. I filled them out, but. No, where's that?
So we're gonna move this forward for second read. And we've got our agenda setting meeting on Thursday anyway, and we'll look and see where we put the action item as far as officially designating a vacancy. To really signal the timeline to begin as far as the 20 days. I'll get the questions sent out for you guys to start to review and then communicate when those 20 days would be out. But most likely it'll be the October, second meeting in October. Most definitely, I think the 20 days is through October. When I say 20 days, I'm looking also at, this may be part of it is, I'm not sure if it says 20 days, 20 calendar days, at least 20.
But we didn't have anybody after 20 weeks.
So,
So maybe another question, if I'm looking at this as calendar days, it would be available by the 5th, whether that is 4 days, it would be available by the 19th. I'm assuming with our conversations, and we discussed this more, we said the agenda, probably in the 19th.
And just as a matter of logistics, the applications come in. Do we see them ahead of the meeting, or this, how does it work?
but usually they would go to Kimberly and then prior to the meeting, they would be sent out as a pack. So I could code them.
Are the applications public as well?
I would not recommend making the applications public. I think we send those things separate to you to look at, yeah. Along with the packet, because we publicize those as part of the packet. Yeah, the other part of it is when those applications come in, we'll confirm that they're eligible to serve as board member.
And then remind me, we get the applications. We interview who we want, we interview all, we don't interview any, what's our prerogative?
There's generally not so many that we would not interview all of them if they're eligible for it. However, if the idea, like the direction we're looking at interviewing the top 3 based off of, when I'm saying the criteria almost becomes the questions of it. And I think what I'm hearing is we would like to see somebody who has had some previous district experience doing something either refer to like a budget committee, committee type level work. And we don't have a lot of them in the district, so there's, things like PTO.
Outside worker.
Yeah, outside, but trying to look at and see that there's been previous interest in working in Pleasant Hill schools, that this is going to be their very first experience working in Pleasant Hill schools. That's generally what the top priorities that I usually see. School boards that are there. When that comes though, we've got a whole bunch of them, and I just communicate with the rest of you and to see if you guys have some directions as far as what you'd like to do with the amount that we've got.
Seems like it.
It's usually very unlikely.
It doesn't want to recruiting.
Yeah, there is, we do have to, I don't think we're gonna run into it in this particular situation, but I've seen a particular situation where agenda-wise, setting an agenda. I've seen a situation where a board has sworn in 2 brand new board members and then immediately went to an action item where they have voted to approve a $4 million loan to rent a new district office. And that was tough to do, the 2 brand new board members. We have to be careful with the agenda as well.
So probably won't go to school between now and then.
You know, we're gonna have the voting before we make an action item. Yeah.
Okay, are we set for timeline?
Yeah.
Good. If there's any other business? 7, next meeting, next September 21, 7 p.m. here at the community center.